During the tumultuous period of the Roman Empire, when the despotic rule of Maximinus Thrax cast a shadow over the once stable state, events unfolded that would forever inscribe new names into the imperial annals. It was then, in the distant yet strategically vital province of Africa, that Marcus Antonius Gordianus Sempronianus, more commonly known as Gordian I, and his son, Gordian II, were suddenly and decisively proclaimed emperors of Rome. Their ascent to power was swift, and their time on the throne, though lasting only 22 days, proved remarkably significant, as it was officially ratified by the Senate itself in the heart of Rome. This rapid, albeit fleeting, recognition by the empire's supreme authority foreshadowed coming upheavals and dramatic turns in the state's fate. The path of Marcus Antonius Gordianus Sempronianus, or Gordian I, to this unexpected culmination began long before he found himself at the center of imperial intrigue. His birth is dated to approximately 158 AD, and his family origin, historians believe, traced its roots to the fertile lands of central Anatolia, indicating his connection to the vast and diverse world of the Roman Empire. Some scholars put forth the intriguing hypothesis that his ancestors received precious Roman citizenship during the time of the distinguished general and statesman of the late Republic, Mark Antony, which elegantly explains the recurring praenomen and nomen in his own name. Although the Historia Augusta, a source that should be treated with a fair degree of skepticism due to its propensity for fabrication, asserts that Gordian I was related to the celebrated Emperor Trajan, this claim is largely dismissed as implausible. Nevertheless, there appears to have been a more credible maternal connection to Herodes Atticus, the renowned Athenian who enjoyed the friendship of such prominent emperors as Marcus Aurelius and Antoninus Pius, suggesting his deep roots within the Roman elite. Despite entering the arena of public life relatively late, Gordian I apparently demonstrated remarkable determination and ability, steadily advancing through the intricate hierarchy of Roman imperial service. The primary source of information regarding his early years is the aforementioned Historia Augusta, and while its narrative should always be approached with caution, it nonetheless contains valuable details. Specifically, it records that Gordian I performed the duties of quaestor most excellently, showcasing exceptional competence. Furthermore, as an aedile, he demonstrated not only his devotion to the Roman people but also considerable personal wealth, staging 12 grand spectacles at his own expense, one for each month of the year. These spectacles often included large-scale gladiatorial contests, and sometimes he provided up to 500 pairs of gladiators, but never fewer than 150, which eloquently attests to his generosity and ability to win the favor of the masses. These qualities undoubtedly played a key role in his sudden, yet equally fleeting, ascent to the pinnacle of imperial power. The Historia Augusta claims in its narratives that Gordian once held the post of consul jointly with Caracalla. However, this assertion raises serious questions, as Gordian's name is absent from the surviving consular lists for any year. Moreover, Caracalla himself could seemingly not have been consul unless he was an ordinary consul, a rank Gordian never achieved before being proclaimed emperor. A more plausible version suggests that he was likely a suffect consul shortly before receiving the proconsular governorship of the province of Africa. By the time of his appointment to Africa in 237 AD, Gordian was about 80 years old. These events unfolded against a backdrop of dramatic change. In 235 AD, Emperor Alexander Severus and his mother Julia Mamaea lost their lives at the hands of rebellious troops in Mogontiacum, after which the energetic military commander Maximinus was proclaimed the new emperor of Rome. Gordian had a son, named after his father and born around 192 AD. This man, known as Gordian II, was reportedly of quite an imposing physique and, notably, maintained an exceptionally harmonious relationship with his father. He already held consular rank when his father served as governor in Africa, and accompanying his parent, he joined him in his new post as legate. One of Maximinus's most unpopular and resentment-provoking decisions was the imposition of additional tax levies, designed to satisfy the steadily growing financial needs of the imperial army. In the preceding years, troop numbers had significantly increased, and the pay disbursed to soldiers had risen, while the tax burden on the populace had largely remained unchanged. Gordian details the events that followed. The procurator of Africa, known for his despotic conduct toward all involved in legal disputes, selected several young men from the wealthiest and most prominent local families and attempted to extort money from them, intending to disinherit them. Enraged by such arbitrary rule, the youths promised to pay the required sum but asked for a few days' delay. Convening a secret meeting, they secured the support of all who had already suffered from the procurator's actions or feared they might become his next victim. They ordered agricultural laborers to arrive in the city at night, armed with clubs and axes. Concealing daggers beneath their cloaks, the youths approached the procurator, ostensibly to discuss the terms of payment. Then, suddenly attacking him, they stabbed and killed him. When his bodyguards drew their swords in response, the laborers from the fields produced their clubs and axes and, fighting for their masters, easily put their opponents to flight. The unexpected triumph of their initial scheme immediately plunged the young conspirators into an extremely perilous and desperate situation. They quickly realized that their own salvation now depended entirely on a single, yet extremely audacious, course. They needed to add even more decisive actions to the bold ones already committed. This implied involving the provincial governor in their dangerous enterprise, thereby inciting the entire province to revolt. They were well aware that the governor, who harbored deep hatred for Maximinus, had long yearned for such an upheaval but had hitherto been paralyzed by fear of taking action. As it was already midday, the entire group of rebels proceeded to the proconsul's residence. The rebels headed straight for Gordian's spacious estate, which at that very moment was to be the site of a lively celebration. Notably, this was the same location where the procurator had been killed shortly before. With varying degrees of coercion, they forced him to accede to their urgent demands to assume the imperial purple. The historian Gordian meticulously recorded that when they forcibly entered his private residence and swiftly overpowered his personal guard, they ceremoniously draped him in the imperial purple cloak and hailed him with all the honors befitting an emperor. Stunned and utterly bewildered by this sudden and dramatic turn of events, Gordian, believing it was either a deliberate act of treachery or part of a broader conspiracy aimed directly against him, in despair, threw himself to the ground. He sincerely pleaded with them to spare the life of an old man who had never harmed them in any way, and to continue showing their unwavering loyalty and goodwill towards the reigning emperor. However, the young men remained resolute in their intentions, their determination underscored by the drawing of their swords. Gordian, deeply alarmed and completely unaware of the events that had transpired leading to this confrontation, was utterly unable to grasp the gravity of the situation. At this critical moment, one of the youths, a gifted orator from a noble family, demanded silence and ordered his companions to quiet down. At this critical juncture, with the glint of a sword in his hand, the orator addressed Gordian, uttering words full of resolve and inevitability. Your position, Gordian, is now overshadowed by a dual threat that has emerged on the horizon of your fate. One is an immediate, tangible danger already looming before you, while the other remains but a phantom, though entirely real, prospect for the future. You are thus faced with a fateful choice that will determine the entire subsequent course of events. Either you choose the path of safety by joining our movement and sharing with us the hope for grand achievements, in which we have undoubtedly invested all our faith and aspirations. Or you decide to oppose the current state of affairs, and then death will reach you today, at this very moment, by our own hands. Numerous favorable signs indicate that the future promises us success. First and foremost, there is the pervasive hatred Maximinus has earned through his ruthless deeds. Furthermore, there is the uncontrollable desire of the Roman people for liberation from the oppression of this cruel and bloodthirsty tyrant. No less important is the unconditional approval of your exemplary conduct in all previous posts, as well as the undeniable fact that you possess an outstanding reputation and enjoy the deepest respect among both the members of the venerable Senate and the entire Roman populace. However, if you refuse to join us, death will inevitably reach you today. And let this be our final, desperate step. We ourselves are prepared to perish if circumstances demand it, but only after we have exacted justice upon you. We have already taken the first, irreversible step, which leaves us no choice but to act with even greater determination and courage. The tyrant's procurator, a symbol of his boundless cruelty and arbitrary rule, is already dead. He has fully paid for his misdeeds. Conversely, if you accept our proposal, sharing this common danger with us and taking on the burden of our struggle, you will not only avoid imminent death at our hands but will also be honored with the greatest distinction, to become emperor. Moreover, our audacious deed, which now seems so reckless, will not be condemned and punished, but rather met with universal approval and glorification." After the young orator finished his speech, the rest of the group, emboldened by his words, cast aside their last doubts and hesitations. News of the unfolding events spread rapidly through the city, and the entire populace immediately gathered to witness Gordian's proclamation as Augustus, initiated by the young men. From that moment, with fitting imperial splendor, adorned with laurel wreaths, Gordian, accompanied by his retinue, solemnly proceeded to Carthage. There, his son, bearing the same name and serving as his father's legate, was vested with equal powers and received the status of co-ruler. Gordian's first step as emperor was to appeal to influential figures in Rome to secure their loyalty and support. He well understood that he could not count on open backing until he eliminated Vitalian, the Praetorian prefect of the capital, who was a loyal adherent of Maximinus. To achieve this, Gordian dispatched several trusted agents to the capital. They posed as messengers from Maximinus, seeking a confidential conversation with Vitalian to deliver their reports. The moment Vitalian focused on verifying the authenticity of the seals on the dispatches, the agents suddenly attacked him, drawing swords skillfully hidden beneath their cloaks. Immediately after Vitalian's death, the Roman populace hastily concluded that Maximinus himself had also fallen. Consequently, all his images, whether statues or paintings, as well as other marks of honor, were ruthlessly destroyed. As Herodian aptly notes, the hatred that fear had hitherto suppressed now poured forth unhindered, freely, and fearlessly. The Senate immediately convened a meeting, even before reliable information about Maximinus had been received, and, placing all their hopes on a favorable turn of events, solemnly proclaimed Gordian and his son emperors, granting them the title of Augustus, and also confirmed the destruction of all symbols of Maximinus's power and honors. Despite gaining support from the Senate, the Gordians seemed to underestimate the true significance of this aid, which ultimately proved negligible. At the same time, Capellian, who held the post of governor of the neighboring province of Numidia, a long-standing and loyal supporter of Maximinus Thrax who harbored deep animosity towards the Gordians, launched an invasion into Africa. His forces consisted of the sole legion stationed in the region, the renowned Legio III Augusta. Gordian too was placed at the head of a hastily assembled militia, consisting primarily of completely untrained soldiers lacking combat experience. As circumstances predicted, this force suffered a crushing defeat in the Battle of Carthage, and Gordian too himself fell in that engagement. Upon learning of his son's tragic death, Gordian I decided to take his own life on April 9, 238 AD. Thus, the Gordians' reign on the imperial throne lasted merely 22 days. A logical question arises: why did they not attempt to sail to Rome, when they should seemingly have realized the hopelessness of their chances against a full legion, possessing only poorly armed and untrained peasants? Perhaps such a retreat might have seemed dishonorable or unworthy of imperial rank. It is worth noting that Gordian II's nephew, known in history as Gordian III, was nonetheless elevated to the imperial throne later. So ended the era of the two Gordians' rule. Despite the brevity of their reign, both were granted the honorary title of Augustus by the Senate and subsequently, according to Roman tradition, deified.